Alright guys, patch notes just came out 3 hours ago, and I just looked over them before going to sleep. It's already 3 AM as you can see here in Europe, but I saw some notes and I was like, nah, I gotta make that video now, so we'll do it now. So let's get right into it, shall we? So seasonal balance adjustment, starting with their best boy, their favorite boy who's getting a buff every time. Hellkit. Now Hellkit will not be able to get critted when he has a higher attack than the unit that is attacking him. So if you're attacking him with an HP scaler, if you're attacking him with an defense scaler, it's impossible for you to crit Hellkit, which will make him a lot tankier actually, which is quite massive for his survivability, because you were not really able to use him in a longer fight because he was just a glass cannon. Then he also had the problem that he was a Veronica victim. Now he's still gonna be a Veronica victim, don't get me wrong here, but he might actually have some use cases here and there. We'll have to see. There are also some other buffs that come along that may also have a similar role to Hellkit with the shielding and everything. But yeah, Hellkit, very interesting on that note. And he has, when Shroud Barrier expires, the owner gets a turn meter boost of 20% instead of 15%. Now, I'm not sure if there's going to be enough to bring him in, really. Maybe it's more for, again, the turn 1. I think Veronica is just his biggest threat, and also Heinrich being a meta unit as well as a threat for him. He's one of these guys that I haven't liked that much for a long time because of the Veronica and the Heinrich mostly. And that is not going to do anything about the Veronica and the Heinrich. But if your opponent doesn't counterpick your Hellkit, if he doesn't put something against your Hellkit, that will actually make him significantly tankier and actually able to survive. Now Mia, I think Mia didn't need a buff at all. I think Mia was very strong already, and she was one of these sleeper picks that was strong, but not everyone knew about it because no one has the Latices really, let's be honest. No one really has Latices to build that many units, but Mia was already strong and they knew it, so they gave her a slight change, but still a change. I don't think that change is gonna do anything for the games that you're gonna pick her in, as I'll explain in a second here. So Mia, the thing with Mia is her skill 3 was able to reduce debuffs by 1 turn. Now it's gonna be 2 turns except control effects. So for a lot of these higher ranked games where you just put in a bunch of debuffers with Bloodbath, relatively tanky, not too much F accuracy because you usually hit your CC overall anyways, and if you layer the CC, it doesn't matter if you miss one debuff, you'll get the other, right? With that, she's gonna cleanse 2 of these, let's say for ditting especially, stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't think, because she doesn't get rid of freezes, right, control effects or anything like that, I don't think that's gonna be where you're gonna use her as a cleanser. You're not gonna use her as a cleanser because of that, for sure. Because quite frankly, what I think is gonna be the case, most likely, is the same playstyle you use her in together with some CC units, and you use her as 3 to reduce these CC units and you cooldowns, and you use her as 2 with a strip and a pushback, as that's been her main thing. Now Kokardi getting some love, just some base speed increase. I would prefer for them to stop messing around with the speed, I'll be honest guys. Like I've went through I'll go over it, but they're speeding up the entire roster. I don't like that. I think speed up, like increase their base stats a little, but don't mess around too much with the speeds. I don't know. I'm not too much of a fan with the speeds messing around. 4 speed is a lot. Of course, Kokardi is not an opener, so it isn't like insane for him, but it's still good. It's still good buff. We take those. He was in a balanced spot, but once Raymarie came out, he kind of fell off because Raymarie just dunks on him, and then you need to be wary of Raymarie and Tiamat, and more people starting to build Born who you need to be wary of as well. Now the Lian buff, the Lian prayers have been heard. Now for each type of buff Lian has, the damage dealt increases by 8% instead of 6 stacks up to 5 stacks. So up to 40% bonus damage from her passive instead of 30. And then her S2 is gonna deal 5 hits to a random enemy. I would have preferred that to just be 4 hits to the unit that you target. But 4 hits to the unit that you target of 160 would have been insane, no? Hold on. 160 times 4. 640, and then you have the pushback turn meter steal where you get an extra turn, so you have 360 on top of that. That would be a 1000% scaling. It would be very high, of course. But yeah, they just increased her damage numbers here, and they increased her damage numbers overall. Now, honestly, I think the main thing, if you're playing some kind of cleave, is defense ignore or a self-attack buff to make the rest of your roster more, how can I say it, more flexible. But I think maybe she's just going to be for a CC cleave team, but there's another contester for the CC cleave that can also work. Now Rosa takes 20% more damage from basic attacks instead of 15% from her Blade Heart Blue. That's so more damage from her passive. Then her skill 1, overall her S1 does more damage, over 10% more, from 70 to 80%. Now I'm calculating the percentage of, right? 10% would be 7% more, so you get the gist. It is 10% like from 70 to 80, but from the overall damage that she does, it's more, because 10% more damage would be 77%. You get what I'm saying. I'm not really finding the right words for it right now, but you get the gist. Now Rosa first applies to and with crits having a 60% chance to inflict the speed down. I unironically think they could have even 3 hits of 60% chance. Yeah, so basically a guaranteed speed down, I suppose. Just a very high. I think that's fine. I think you kind of want her to be able to apply these debuffs, basically guaranteed to make up for the fact that she doesn't have some defense ignore or anything like that in her kit. And I think this is actually quite big, that she's going to be able to dunk some debuffs on the enemy. But again, there's Messiah, there's Batsby who will get it right after this one. Now, Ninfoniel purifies instead of 3 debuffs from all allies on her S2. Don't really care about the S2 that much. It's decent, but the bigger one is the S3 here. Applies 2 turns buff, and then if an ally animus has higher attack than defense when entering, she applies an attack buff, otherwise applies a defense buff. So she has better synergy now with def scalers as well, instead of attack and just attack buffers. This makes her a lot more flexible in drafts, being not just a cleanser, but a healer, a buffer. Oh my days, thinking about it. Ninfoniel might actually be one of the crazy ones here. The main issue that Ninfoniel still has, of course, is first of all, she has quite long cooldowns in her kit, which makes her susceptible to Holden resets, and Veronica victim, another Veronica victim, of course. That's also something to keep in mind. But yeah, and then the big one though is the Rhyme Bloom. It has been adjusted, and it's not just a 40% attack increase now, it's better than that. It's a 25% more damage. First of all, the 40% on top of the 40% attack increase has done way less damage increase than this 25% does to attack scalers. So attack scalers are eating good with her, and other units are eating good with this as well. So Ninfoniel has gotten quite significant buffs here. And it could very likely put her in a higher tier to, let's say, she doesn't have passive cleansing, but maybe Ling tier. Depends on the Veronica. Maybe Ling tier even, we'll have to see, because she is more consistent with the cleansing, right? She can just cleanse these debuffs consistently. What I would have preferred is just a 2-turn immunity, because 1-turn immunity is useless. But she gets the cleanses, because 1-turn immunity what it does is basically, if your opponent is playing the debuffs, he's gonna take the first turn anyways. Therefore, he's gonna freeze your team, and then you're gonna give them immunity when they're already frozen. No, you will be basically forced to use this, but with the 3 debuffs, it might do something here. But yeah, Ninfoniel has had a massive change here. I think the defense buff screams to me they want to get her ready for our new defense scaler, who's gonna just control and be a DPS, but also at the same time be able to control one unit to not play the game with her taunts on this one. But yeah, I'll go into the new kits of the new units on a separate video when we have their stats and everything, as I believe they're quite important for us to note. So Ninfoniel, and then we have Batsby, the Great Gatsby. Now, Batsby's damage. Now, Batsby, for context, has always been one of the highest damaging units in the game. And he has been someone who has been able to one-shot Holtons with his S1. Now they increased his passive that for each debuff on the enemy, he does not just do 10% more damage, but 25%. And then, that's massive actually, pretty massive, as you use him for the CC cleave. And then instead of 30 to 40%, now he didn't really have any issues with red units with the 30%, but with the 40%, that's massive. And now, outside of the red units, right, the damage scaling is almost as high on every other unit as it used to be on the red units for each debuff. So that's pretty big. There's more bigness to the Batsby. Wow. And that is, instead of 20% turn meter, he gains 25 per crit on his S3, meaning he can get an instant S2. So S3 into S2 is going to wipe the entire floor. If no one cuts and the Batsby lands all the crits on his S3 and he takes the second turn into into an enemy team that has been, let's say, set up by an Ahor with the D-breaks and the debuffs that give him 75% bonus damage and even 120% bonus damage to red units, he's just gonna scoop the entire team. That said, there needs to be setup for him. But that setup is also easier done now, as he has a lot more speed. 4 speed. That's a lot. That's actually quite a lot. So you can run him a lot faster. So Batsby is definitely someone to look out for, guys. Batsby is definitely also someone to look out for. And then we have Claus. Now, Claus, hacking, exclusive debuff, cannot be inflicted with hacking process. Increases the damage taken by 35% instead of 25%. And the damage dealt, and decreases the damage dealt by 45% instead of 40%. This effect cannot be purified. Now the thing about this effect, guys, is that effect stays for 2 turns. So it will expire eventually. Unless they changed it, and we can see it here that it won't expire ever. And now, of course, for 2 turns, 35% more damage taken is nice and all, but I think she would need to have a strip on her S3 to become viable. That's my opinion. Without the strip, I find it hard. I find it hard to... I find it hard to apply her debuffs without the strip. I think she's gonna be a Plume. Without the strip, I just think Plume is better. So yeah. Then we have skill 1. Increased damage. Increase the hit chance of getting a hacking process to 100%. Very much needed. And here increases the chance to hit a hacking process to 100% instead of 75%, increasing her consistency by a large margin, very much needed. But again, you kind of want her to have value from turn 1, and if you don't have a stripper, then maybe you can run her. Thinking about it. If you run a Heinrich, fast Heinrich, and then a Hein goes, and then you go after the Heinrich, you can go the Claus and spam your opponents down with a lot of debuffs from the Claus. But at the same time, right, you could also run an Ahor instead of the Claus. You could also run a Plume instead of Claus. So yeah, no, not too sure about the Claus, I'll be honest. I think a strip would fit her well. Then Nevette. It would also actually be very good against Veronicas. Then we have Nevette. Now Nevette is getting her damage amplified from 160% to 180% from the S3. Again, I think Nevette would have preferred to have an increased petrified chance either as a buff or an increased damage on the S2. Now the S3 screams to me, they just don't really want you to think while you play Nevette, right? Instead, they don't want you to think, oh, should I use S2, should I use S3? They just want you to use the S3. It is a buff, not a big one. The big one comes now, actually. The big one comes now. Hoyen. Hoyen is actually a nutty one, and that could actually shake up the meta, depending on how the defense scaling works and how high the damage is really going to be. Now, I have a 111 P1 Hoyen, I think. We'll have to see how hard a maxed Hoyen hits with this buff. Because if the maxed Hoyen with this buff can one-shot death scalers, she might be a terror. If not, then not. And it's all about that. It's all about that, really. But if she can one-shot defense scalers with her S3, and then you can lock, she might be a terror. Because then you can use her like the Lilium, but instead of the Lilium, she will get a 40% attack increase after killing someone with the S3. And on top of that, if she dies, she has still another ult going. So she's not going to just trade a 1-for-1. She's very likely to trade a 2-for-1 if she deals enough damage to kill the first unit, gets the 40% increase, and it gets lower. You get the gist. So Hoyen, quite a big one. Now we will have to see how big it really is. If it's really big, she might even be viable against in a standard comp with some bruises, with some CC, together with everything a little bit mixed in, where she just says, you know what, I'ma be a big threat. I'ma be a big threat, and you will have to hold nest to me, or I'll come for you, right? Something like that. This one is quite big, not gonna lie. This one is quite big. Everyone who has played Lilium knows how hard Lilium hits when she goes into a death break. Of course, some Lilians just one shot without the death break. But this one is basically a death break here. Now, of course, this is when she's 1 HP. And when she's 50% HP and she consumes 50% HP, that's still a 40% defense reduction on the enemy. With 520 scaling. The main issue for turn 2 would be the Hulton. As for so many units, the Hulton S2 is just a dumb ability. I said it, okay? Hulton S2 is just, I'm not a big fan. Anyways. Next up we have Dokyoki. Now Dokyoki changed the skill, don't care. Now, Dokyoki will purify all debuffs through her passive if she got her ultimate off. Quite big, actually, quite big. So if she gets her ult off, she's going to purify all debuffs. That's quite big, but at the same time, not too big. Because most people run Nahor, and therefore her ult is not going to be able to push the team. And if she can push the team and the unit dies before they get the turn, they're not going to get cleansed, not going to get healed, and they're just going to die. It will punish low damage comms without a plume or any DPS though. That's for sure. It will punish them. You can run her then on Alicorn, or you run her on a fast codex. But if you run her on a fast codex, it's not going to change anything from previously, mainly. As she was still, as long as she takes first turn, she's fine. But she doesn't have the speed usually to take the first turn. Then we have Turandot. Now will dispel buffs and apply turn meter minus. Yeah, okay. Now we have the shell adjustments. Turandot, of course, she's gonna get a special enhancement, right? But then we have the shell adjustments. Whitefang. After the host acts, instead of getting 8% more crit damage, they get 10% more crit damage, up to 8 stacks. This is still bonds. They would need to make it that it has like a max of 5 stacks, so you can stack it up way faster, because ain't nobody is taking 8 turns on his DPS. It's just not happening. Then Dark Moon is actually a big one. FAC by 100%. Ain't nobody is gonna resist those Heinrich debuffs. Okay, so if you want to land your debuffs, you're gonna hit them. On Heinrich, on Nahor, on everyone, you're gonna hit them. Well, they kind of hit anyways. But now you can just drop a Dark Moon, and this is why I actually opened Etheria Restart myself, because I needed to check something. Yes, okay, perfect. 3 turn cooldown, that's what I wanted to know. That's actually quite important. So the Dark Moon can make it that you basically can also run very low accuracy on your units, have a Dark Moon on them, run a HP percent piece, a little bit of HP percent there, a little bit of HP percent here, and you will still have enough accuracy to debuff your opponent while getting a lot tankier. So the Dark Moon has already been underrated, in my opinion, has been underused. And especially on strippers, especially if you're playing a fast game, I think the Dark Moon has a lot of potential, and I think we're going to see more in the next season of it. Now, Law of Silence is going to get also some adjustments. At the start of the battle, it puts you into Void State, and instead of having a 4-turn cooldown, it has a 3-turn cooldown to put you back into Void State. Currently, I don't see a unit that is going to use Law of Silence for that Void State to get back in it, because you're going to use it as a attack scaling DPS. And I don't really see any of these using a Law of Silence. But I could be wrong. Could be wrong, of course. Maybe a Batsby. Maybe a turn 2 Batsby. Who knows? As he is going to be a lot harder to CC. Actually, I'm cooking. Hold up now. But, yeah, Dark Moon. Law of Silence. Reduce the cooldown of it. So you're going to be able to actually, if you're going to cycle... Hold on now. Wait, that's actually could be crazy. So if you're going to cycle through the first Dark Moon... Law of Silence. The first 3 turns you survive. With a Lily, that's relatively easy, because she just resets the shell. After that, you're going to have a 2-turn Void State. And if you have that 2-turn Void State, you have a 3-turn cooldown. So after you come out of the Void State, you just have 1 turn where you're exposed and you can get killed. Then on top of that, what you also need to consider is, what if a Linglo extends it? Now, of course, it can be stripped, but chances of it getting stripped have been significantly reduced. Now, of course, FRES, you can't really build on it. You can't really build on the FRES, but 100% FRES, ha or not ha is what we say in Switzerland. To have or to not have. So yeah, it's a It's a decent buff. Hard to utilize the shell at the moment. We'll have to see. Now, as you will be able to see, there's some changes that we don't see here. Now, we have Ouroboros. When the host takes action, if the enemy's self HP percent is higher than 70%, I mean, this one could just be removed in my opinion. Increases the damage by 8% and speed by 8 up to 7 stacks. So why would you ever use a White Fang? Ouroboros is the play. I've seen some players actually already play the Ouroboros on their Lilith as well. Mainly from the Asia side of things. The last couple of days of the season, last season. So they were up to something. Maybe they knew something about it. But 8 times 7, what's that? 56% bonus damage. Pretty solid. Pretty solid. You know who I think could use that? And the speed? The new LD unit that is going to come out, that is going to self-push herself. Therefore, she's going to take a relative high amount of turns for a DPS, and will be able to stack this a lot faster. That said, she has taunts where this is going to be a bit of an issue. But Ouroboros does have the immunity, and you want the immunity on her. You want, because otherwise you're going to be a Holden victim, right? Everyone has to play immunity in turn 2, because otherwise they're a Holden victim. S2 Holden comes in. Then Artisan, that's one that I actually, no one really has talked about it during the season, but I've mentioned it, and I've talked about it throughout the end of the season a little bit with some people in the RTA community, in the Discords as well. Join my personal Discord as well, by the way, guys, don't forget about it. The Artisan's shields are just too high, in my opinion. And in my opinion, it would need a nerf. Overall shields. My suggestion was that shields overall need a nerf. But they decided to not overall nerf the shields, but only the Artisan. And I think that's a good change. I think the Artisan shields were too big. They were toxic. And having their shields lowered to 300% is still going to be strong enough. You're not going to change your Rahu, I think, away from the Artisan. Who you might change back to Jackal Guard is a Holden, though. We'll have to see about that one. But one thing's missing here, and that's the Amber. Where's the Amber? Where's the Amber? Now, I'll be honest, right? I'll be honest here. I've been on the fence on the Amber nerfs for quite some time, as I've talked about it previously already. In the higher ranks, the Amber is not really being used outside of Raymarie, Lily, and Tiamat, right? But I know there is some Amber spam, and it's harder to punish Amber if you don't have all units and if you don't have all units built. For example, the whales that have literally turn 1 and turn 2 built, as we've seen throughout the end of the last season, there are some players that have turn 1 and turn 2 ready. They were able to, if someone drops a random Amber Heinrich, they'd be like, alright, or a random Amber Messiah, because they knew they're up against turn 1. They were like, alright, thanks for the free win. I'll just pivot into turn 2 then. Appreciate it. But the main issue is that because in the current economy, it's not that easy to pivot unless you spend money. It can be an issue, it can be played around, but the main issue actually is when I got enlightened is about the Amber in Union Front. RTA, you usually can kind of play around it, especially, as I said, a lot of players just run 3 Ambers. The Lily is likely not going to get picked in from the turn 2 player, as you're going to outspeed the turn 2 player, very likely. Then the Raymarie is likely to be banned from the second pick. And if your first pick, you could potentially ban the Tiamat, and then they're out of Ambers. If they still run Ambers, like a Holden, then it could be a problem. That said, if they run an Amber on the Holden, if you pivot and stuff like that, they struggle a lot. But the pivot is an issue. The pivot is a big issue. But the real thing about the Amber really is Union Front. Me personally, I'm more of a casual on the Union Front side of things. I have to admit that. I'm not that crazy in Union Front. But being part of the community and talking to a lot of these high rank players as well, and also in the Union Fronts here, Amber spam in the Unions is a problem. Amber spam in Union Front is a big problem. And this is why I thought an Amber nerf is gonna be coming. But it's not here. And I think they could have done it. I think they could have done it. I know some turn 2 players also were doom posting a little bit. Oh, what if Amber gets nerfed? I think the nerfs on the shells so far have been pretty modest. All the shells are still viable. In terms of the shell balancing, they have usually done quite a good job in terms of the balancing after the initial release. So I wasn't really too worried about them completely gutting the Amber. And even if they would nerf the Amber, I think it would have been fine, as yeah, I've already haven't really relied on the Amber too much anymore anyways, and managed to do so. Of course, I struggle a bit more against turn 1. Usually like to ban the Messiah myself a lot, even if I'm second pick. But that's the trade-off, right? That's the trade-off. Some depending on how you build your account. You're better against this, you're better against that. But just to say, you know what, there's so many people that struggle with it. There are people that abuse the Amber. It shouldn't be, or that are people that spam Amber. That shouldn't be a thing either. Let's just nerf it a little bit. Give it to the people, you know, and move on with it. But that hasn't been the case. Hasn't been the case. Now, overall, outside of that, in the bigger picture, let me pull up the characters so I can actually have the Animus archive. Now, they decided against nerfing any units. And the reason why they didn't nerf any units is my assumption. Of course, I don't know their reason. I don't have any dev contacts or anything. But my assumption is going to be money. Quite frankly, money. Because if they nerf units, they're gonna have to make a reset event. And if a reset event comes, everyone is gonna get a lot of lattices freed up. And lattices are their main source of income at the moment. I think their system has been flawed, I'll be honest. I think they should have kept the pity at 100 and just gave us more lattice. But the monetization system, I'm not the dev, right? They do what they do. But overall, let me think here about the changes. So we have Doki buff. She's still gonna have the same problems, and also the same positives. She's still gonna be used in the same spots. She's still gonna work in the same spots as she did before. Just better. Just better. If your units take the turn, they're gonna be able to do a lot of work. And then we have, so the Doki one can actually be quite significant. Then the Hellkit buff for his survivability, also quite big. Is it enough for him to be picked over some of the others? Highly depends on the Veronica, to be honest. You kind of need to pick the Veronica or ban the Veronica. I feel like. That's my personal opinion. I feel like you kind of want to pick the Veronica or ban the Veronica before you pick the Hellkit. That said, at the same time, you're going to be able now to actually build him on full attack. And I assume you're going to want to build him on attack and speed. Full attack, full speed. So he actually gets a lot of value from that Shroud Barrier. And then when you have him on full attack, he's gonna be very tanky. And if he does so, he does decent damage, by the way. It's not like that. But this one's the main one that I'm thinking about. That he's gonna just be a dickhead. Just like Ditting is a dickhead sometimes with his cooldown increase on the S1. Absolute dickhead move. He's just gonna stun on the S1. He's gonna be like, you take a stun real quick. Go to sleep, you know. Prime Kazuo. So Hellkit has been nice buff. Also together in conjunction with the Ninfoniel. I think Ninfoniel has been the biggest one. I think Ninfoniel is actually a big one. I do think that Ninfoniel might be the big one. She might be the biggest one out of the bunch. Because quite frankly, what I just thought of in my head is all of these buffed units. If you have an Ninfoniel that is going to increase their damage and give them some kind of safety net, some kind of survivability, some kind of safety net until they take their turn, they're going to be hitting big time. Let's say the Ninfoniel, sending it, and setting up the Batsby. And not really even the Batsby actually. Because the Batsby prefers actually debuffs than the attack buff. He can work though. I think with the attack buff, he just cycles, gets 100%, S3, S2, probably kills anyways. But the main one, the Ninfoniel with the big ups, the new LD unit, but also the Rosa, I think she could work. And where has she been now? Someone like a... Where is she? Hoyen. Right, the Hoyen with the Ninfoniel buffs might just very likely one-shot someone. And if the Ninfoniel buffs don't get block buffed, they don't get stolen on the Hoyen, might be a tough one. Might be a tough one, not gonna lie. Hoyen might be tough. Considering this. She might just be a tough one to deal with. Now, what's gonna be best, right? Because the Hoyen will get such high attack because of the Ninfoniel, the count will give you diminishing returns. Therefore, the Tiger Jin might be the best. But at the same time, the count 2-turn attack buff is kind of nice. And the lifesteal on the Hoyen is also kind of nice. A lot of question marks in terms of that one. There's a lot of theory crafting here. Right? A lot of theory crafting here. Already my mind is thinking a lot. But I just want to share with you guys some of my thoughts. And we have the Batsby, right? Batsby's going to be hitting like a truck. He already hits like a truck. Now he's going to hit harder. And harder. Batsby, I'm also thinking of a way to make work in turn 2, maybe with an Ninfoniel or something like that, because I'm not fast enough to go turn 1. But Batsby is a very hard-hitting unit. I think the base speed and the 25% bonus turn meter are big, and also him having basically the same ratio on every unit now that he previously only had for red units, and completely blasted the red units out of the water with this, is kind of wild. So Batsby's damage has a lot of potential, but he needs the right supports to work, right? Keep that in mind. He needs some things to align for him as well. That's something that we still need to consider with the Batsby. Now, what else? Then the Claus, I think she needs a strip. Nevette, I talked about as well. Dokyoki, I talked about. Now, who I would have liked to see, you could have buffed the Uriel Mocha as well, by the way. The red, a little bit of red gaming. Shiada. Where's my Shiada buff? Where's my Chloros buff? I know some people say, well, he's strong in PvE. Well, in this economy, I'm not going to build a unit just for PvE. I'm not going to latize my Chloros just for PvE. It's not happening. I'm going to build the Chloros if he's viable in RTA. But Chloros is, I don't know, I think they hate this guy. I generally feel like they don't like the bloke. They just leave him in the dirt. Dead. You know? And another one unit that they hate is Sonya. Like, she's not even good in PvE these days. What even is Sonya? Who is this girl? Done dirty. I think what they need to do with her is a complete overhaul. Completely rework the kit. Rework the kit, guys. Rework the Sonya. My suggestion, I want to share my suggestion real quick with you guys. Because I feel like I had a good suggestion. And that is that she, instead of the dot here, yeah, she does that. But instead of the dot who is 2 turns, she will do 8% fixed damage to the unit that she's targeting with her S1. Percentage damage. And it will cut their HP pool by that 8%. So the Raymarie will also lose 8% of her HP scalings because she will have less overall HP. It's like injury. You start stacking it up. She has 50k HP. Well, not anymore, right? Now she has 45k. And then she gets lower and lower and she cannot get healed up more and more. You get the gist. And then on top of that, I would make it that she also, after each S1, AoE inflicts another 4% of that to everyone. And then this one also 8% on everyone. Something like that. Maybe. And then this one, you explode all of the injury. Just like the red from Epic 7, basically. So if you have, let's say, 30% injury racked up on your opponent, you just do 60% damage. So it's basically a dead. Something like that. Ticking time bomb, basically. Ticking time bomb against HP scalers, very good. Something like that. Would be my personal suggestion here. Would be my personal input. You know what I'm saying here. But overall, what can I say about that balance patch? Well, I'll be honest. There are changes that are on units that have been, in my opinion, weaker than on the last patch. For example, the Lilith buff was bonkers. Right, the Lilith buff was bonkers. But the Lilith was quite decent actually in the season before that as well. The Born buff was minor in my opinion, but he was playable in the season before, but it made him viable this season. Now this season, they have the Kokardi buff. Kokardi buff reminds me a little bit of Born. Kokardi is viable now, a little bit more speed, small buff. You know, make it easier for him to do his job, basically. The Hellkit could be a big buff, I'll be honest, could be a big buff, making him a lot tankier. I'm thinking about, again, the Ninfoniel. If you use the Ninfoniel together with the Hellkit. Imagine the shields, guys. Oh my god, no, what am I thinking about? But imagine the shields. With the attack buffs from the Ninfoniel, the Hellkit just going bam. Yo. And then you would need a Heinrich or a Nevette to stop them. Otherwise you're cooked. And you need them to go first as well. And probably the Heinrich, I suppose. Probably the Heine. Yep. Hold on now. Then the Mia is also a minor buff. I also think she's similar to Born. She was already good. She got better now. That said, I don't think she's going to change in her playstyle. She just has some more value. I think she's one that you kind of want to set up with some CC units. She helps a lot there. Then Rosa, hard to say about the numbers. Batsby is going to hit like a truck, but he has already hit like a truck last season and still had a hard time finding his spot. Now the more speed and some of the buffs in terms of the overall damage to units outside of red units is going to give him a lot more consistency. Same with the turn meter push being 25%. I think he could be a big one. But also again, depends on the meta, as I said before, on the Batsby. Claus, I don't think it's gonna be a big one, to be honest. I don't think the Claus is too big of a deal. As I feel like she needs a strip, the Sonya said. Outside of that, anyone else need a buff? Rosa's getting some more love as well. Lian is getting a buff, but at the same time, I feel like Lian is gonna be fulfilling a similar spot to Batsby, where Batsby is just gonna be likely the one that you're just gonna pick over the Lian anyways, quite frankly, because the Batsby just has these insane scalings. That said, thinking about it, the percentage, right? 8% is like, well, how much did we say? 40% increase, 360 times 40 AoE into this. If you consider again with the Ninfoniel, I think a lot of this patch comes down to the Ninfoniel. I do think a lot of this patch comes down to the Ninfoniel, and I feel like depending on how much of a winner of this patch Ninfoniel is, other of these attack scaling units are also going to be big winners, right? Because all of these other units that are buffed would have good synergy with the Ninfoniel. Hellkit would have good synergy. Even Mia would have good synergy. Lian could be Cleave or Ninfoniel with Cleave. Batsby, decent synergy. Nevette, decent synergy. There's a lot of units that have decent synergy with the Ninfoniel here. Lian especially as well, Kokardi as well, Hellkit, right? These three especially here, I think. And the Rosa as well, actually. The Rosa as well, the Born as well. So I think it comes a lot down to the Ninfoniel. I think Ninfoniel might be the big one. And because of the Ninfoniel helping these units survive initially and deal a lot more damage, might be a big game changer. I think Ninfoniel might be the one that shakes up the meta and the new units. Now, of course, it also comes down quite a bit on how strong the Hoyen is going to be, right? If the Hoyen can just one-shot the defense scaler with her ultimate, she's going to be exceptionally strong. If she cannot one-shot the defense scaler with her ultimate, she's going to be stronger, but still not very much insane. With that, let me know what you guys think of this patch. Now, I wanted to keep it relatively neutral for you guys, give you a little bit of my insights, and overall, I'd say the patch, and in terms of the good and the bad of the patch, I think they could have even buffed some more units. I think they could have nerfed some units. They could have went bigger on the changes. So yeah, overall I think it was a good patch, but I think they could have been a lot more bolder. I think they could have been bolder with the patch notes. I think they could have buffed more units, nerfed some units, nerfed shells, buffed shells more, right? They could have went harder with the changes, in my opinion. They could have even went harder, right? The White Fang buff, like, come on now. With that said, guys, I wish you all a blessed day. These are the patch notes. It's already 4 AM. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Etheria. And I'm Ronnie, and I'm out. Peace.